What's going on, Legionnaires, and welcome back to Comic Breakdown. If you're new to the channel, do me a favor and hit that sub button, hit the notification bell, and make sure you're not missing any of the awesome content we have coming out. Now for this video, we're going to be jumping into something new. We're going to be jumping into Heroes Reborn, issue number 1. Now this is written by Jason Aaron, art is by Ed McGuinness, and this is a really unique story because this is showing us a world without Avengers, where Tony Stark never built an Iron Man armor, where Thor never picked up his hammer, where Wakanda was dismissed as nothing more than myth, nothing more than legend, and Captain America had never been found in the ice. And instead of having the Avengers, we have the Squadron Supreme of America. But for some reason, the Daywalker known as Blade is the one man alive who seems to remember the entire world somehow being reborn. Now be sure to check into my channel a little bit later on today because we're going to be covering some Marauders, we're going to have some Hellions, and we're going to be covering Scott Snyder's Nocterra. And with that being said, let's dive into this breakdown. Alright guys, so issue number 1, it picks us up in East LA. Now 2 weeks ago, Blade, he woke up covered in dry blood in a kind of flop house in London. Now he had no recollection of how he actually got there. No memory of the squalor that he appears to be living in for months now. And as we're getting this narration, we see Robbie Reyes riding a bike down the street. And we're seeing Robbie because the first thing Blade tried to do was try to phone Avengers Mountain. Try to get a teleport there, but no one was there. He ended up investigating and finding out that the Avengers Mountain never existed. Or at least it's not existing here. And so he's been slowly hunting down every Avenger he may know to try to find somebody that remembers the Avengers and try to figure out how this world has changed and why. And as he talks to Reyes, he asks him, he tells him, I'm looking for Ghost Rider. And Reyes tells him, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know who that is. I don't know what that is. I don't know what drug you're trying to peddle to me, but get some treatment, dude, because I have no idea what you're on about. And so Blade, he's kind of feeling like he's going crazy. He's either the last Avenger on Earth or he's gone completely insane. Because 2 weeks ago, he woke up in a world where no one ever heard of the Avengers, where it's like they never existed. And because of this, he's been sticking to the shadows, searching for someone that can convince him he's not crazy. But he hasn't found that person yet. He feels like the whole world's gone under the knife, being carved up and replaced by something completely different. Now this is when we're taken to Washington, D.C. days later, and we see none other than freaking Dr. Doom. So it doesn't appear that all of the villains and heroes are gone. We still have individuals like Dr. Doom. Now Dr. Doom, he's here at Washington, D.C. because he's here to invade. He's here to take over, and he's come with an army of one. And he lets them know that his homeland, it was taken. And so now he's going to take this one. And this is where he reveals that he has the Crimson Gem. He took it from the Hidden Temple, took it from the god of rage and unstoppability, which now makes him Dr. Juggernaut. And we see Dr. Juggernaut just plow through everybody. He is laying waste. And Blade really thinks about it. And the world, while the Avengers aren't here, it's not that drastically different. Generations of men still wallow in ignorance. Rivers of blood still get spilled every day for no good reason. There are still TV preachers, there are still crooked politicians, but there is something else that this world has reborn. Because even without the Avengers, Earth still had its heroes. Earth still had some kind of defenders, and that is when we see the arrival of Hyperion coming in and bashing Dr. Juggernaut right in the face. And we see these two titans go head to head. And Hyperion, he is just beating the crap out of Dr. Juggernaut. Now, Dr. Juggernaut, he's mad. He's mad because Hyperion and the rest of the squadron, they made it sure that his country had fair elections. So Dr. Doom, he couldn't rig them. He couldn't make himself the consistent ruler over and over again, trying to claim that it's free and fair elections. And so that's why he came here today. That's why he's trying to invade America, because he feels like he was slighted by the Squadron. And as these two battle, Hyperion tries to grab the gem, tries to take it from his chest, but Dr. Juggernaut stops him, grabs him around the neck, and we see Hyperion, he flexes his neck muscles so strong that it literally breaks Dr. Juggernaut's hand, shatters it, and we see Hyperion just blast him with energy. But this is not the only hero. This is not the only person to be able to help Earth out. And this is where we see the arrival of Nighthawk. Because Dr. Doom, he didn't come by himself. He brought the rest of the Masters of Doom with him. And so the Squadron has had to split up and try to take on all of these individuals one by one. And this is where we see Nighthawk drop into the Capitol building, only to see a very interesting villain. We see Venom, but he's going by the name of Black Skull. So on this Earth, we're seeing a lot of different things. We're seeing so many different changes, and Blade is trying to figure out what the heck is going on. He's tried to go find Stephen Strange, only to find that there's nobody there. Nobody remembers or knows who Stephen Strange is. You know, Jennifer Walters, nobody knows who that is. At least in the terms of Avengers. She is a notable and successful lawyer and having a law practice in LA. And with all of these changes, we're introduced to another hero. We're introduced to Dr. Spectrum. Now, Dr. Spectrum, he's getting some kind of notification, something coming from deep space. And so he is on his way to intercept whatever this may be. And as he's making his way to intercept, he ends up blasting past Carol Danvers. Carol Danvers, who is not Captain Marvel, who's just a fighter pilot, who's never made it to the rank of captain. And as all of this is transpiring down on the ground, Tony Stark is watching all of this, but he's not Iron Man, he's just a businessman. So there is just so much wrong with what's going on in this world. You know, Bruce Banner, the first time he hulked out, he was thrown into another dimension, the prison dimension, to kind of keep him locked away. Locked him away in the prison of the negative zone, never to be heard from again. This is kind of where they throw everything that they can't deal with, but they don't want to be a threat anymore. And so Blade, he's under the assumption right now that somebody did this. Somebody is behind all of this. And he believes it's all affected by one event. And this is when he stands in front of the memorial of Captain America. And he believes that one event that was changed, that one extremely important event that was changed, was Captain America. He was presumed dead. He was never found. And everything that followed after that led them to what is now present day. Present day, where we have things going on like the Scarlet Witch never being rehabilitated. You know, Quicksilver never became what he was. And instead, Quicksilver, he was actually killed. He was killed during a battle with the Squadron. And Scarlet Witch, her chaos magic allowed her to absorb his powers. And in doing so, she became the Silver Witch. And now she vows vengeance against all of the Squadron. And we see a speedster fight between her and Blur. And she is doing her best to try to keep up with him, but he seems to be faster. You know, the Masters of Doom, they're made up of the greatest villains the world has ever known. Like the sworn enemy of Power Princess, the final Allfather, destroyer of Asgard, the unstoppable Algog. The Masters of Doom are absolutely nothing to mess with. These guys are the top of the top. And you know, in other words, all the gods, they're dead. But why would they need gods when it's got heroes like the Squadron Supreme? And we see Spectrum right above Earth, and he has something coming in on him. He has 5 different colored fists starting to hit him all at once. And Spectrum realizes exactly who this is. And he's in disbelief. He can't believe it. You know, this person is supposed to be dead. He saw them die. And the stones turn to dust. But this is when we see Thanos holding the Infinity Gauntlet. And so we're seeing that all the heavy hitters, they are here. Villain or good guy, everybody has a fight cut out for them. Now this is where we're taken to some days earlier in Norway. And Blade, he has found Thor. And he goes up to him to have a conversation. And he tells him, you know, you brought me to this bar once. You told me a story about your father, how he sent you to Earth and made you human, gave you a little bit of humility, and he learned his lesson, and in doing so, he found his hammer as well, making him his godly self again. But the only issue is, he never found his hammer. He never found Mjolnir. And Odin is now dead. And Thor, he is nothing more than a drunk sitting in a bar. Now Blade, he tries. He really does try to talk Thor into helping him. To helping Thor find his hammer and be able to figure out what happened to this world. But Thor isn't having it. He doesn't want to hear it. He wants to sit here. He wants to sit in self-pity and self-wallow and drink his sorrows away. Now Blade, he just can't figure out why he's the only one that remembers. And so he goes to the only person that he really believes can give him answers. This is where he goes to Nighthawk. Now Nighthawk, he's in the middle of battling the Black Skull's minions here, and Blade comes in and just starts wrecking havoc on him as well. And he lets Nighthawk know, like, I've heard that you're the smartest man in the world. And if that's true, then who am I and why am I here? And Nighthawk, he's just like, you know what? Stay out of this, Blade. Like, go back to London, eat your rats and magpie. He's like, of course I know who you are. I know every 2-bit cutthroat in every corner of the globe. He lets them know, like, he is the face in the dark when their fear won't let them sleep until the night that he is standing over them. And he asks Blade, like, is that this night for you, Daywalker? Is this the night that I stand over you? And Blade lets him know, like, look here, dude. Like, you people can change whatever it is around you all you want. But I'm telling you right now, there is no world where you can lay a hand on me without losing it. And Nighthawk, he's just like, man, listen. Like, I don't have time to fight you right now. I'm trying to save the world. And Blade, he's like, you know, come to think of it, I'm actually doing the same thing too. You know, because right now he's been searching the whole globe for some kind of proof that he's not insane. And he just got exactly what he needed. He needed to see in somebody's eyes, somebody else who knows this world is one giant lie. And now he's got it, because Nighthawk gave him that. And as all of the Squadron Supreme, they battle around the globe, Nighthawk, he puts out a kind of memo saying to enhance all global surveillance, because right now his primary target is Blade. Even though they have all of this ridiculous stuff going on, Blade just left an impression, and Nighthawk's gonna want to fight back. Now, after Blade took off from there, he went searching. He had to break into the Pentagon and steal the last known coordinates. And from there, he let his vampire nose guide him by the smell of human blood. Because no matter how cold it is, even if it was from 1945, he would be able to smell it. And Blade makes his way down into this ice cavern. Because in 1945, the greatest hero in the world, he disappeared. He was lost and he was presumed dead. Even though he wasn't. There were just never any Avengers around to find him. Technically, there really isn't. But there is Blade. And Blade, he doesn't give up. Even if the whole damn world's against him, he's going to complete his mission. And this is where we see him find Captain America. And at the same time, Mjolnir appears in front of Thor. And Blade murmurs to himself, Avengers assemble. Yeah. Alright guys, so issue number 2. Issue number 2 picks us up some years ago with Galactus making landfall on Earth. Silver Surfer leading the way. Now Hyperion, he's kind of excited about this. Like, not gonna lie, this is something he's been looking forward to. Because while his story is almost identical to that of Clark Kent, Galactus is the thing that his parents sent him away from. Galactus was taking over his world. And so this was his chance to get revenge. To get revenge for his parents, for his planet, for all of his people. Now, this was his chance to prove that they didn't all die in vain. That sending him here wasn't a mistake. That it had some kind of purpose. And this is when Silver Surfer, he lets Galactus know that there's something coming in. Something coming in at speeds that are even faster than him. And this is where we see Hyperion literally blast straight through the head of Galactus. And this fight is freaking over. Just like that, it's done with. Hyperion just mopped the floor with one of Marvel's greatest enemies. And so we're seeing how strong he truly is. You know, so for all intents and purposes, he's Superman. That's really what he is at the end of the day, and he really does try to do what is best for the people of this planet. That he really does want to help these people. He may have a very violent and strict way of doing it, but he truly believes he's doing the best thing. I mean, this guy's a ninth grade history teacher, you know, and we see that in this panel where he's sitting here just grading papers, grading a paper that's actually kind of unique to the story, because the paper is talking about the disappearance of Captain America. But these, you know, these are kind of his moments of solitude, if you will, his opportunity to really stay connected to humanity. You know, one thing Power Princess, one thing she wants to do is kind of build a city or a kind of hall of justice, if you will. But he doesn't think this is necessary. First of all, he doesn't want to seem like he's lording over them. He doesn't want to seem like a god. He wants to avoid that at all possibilities. You know, because at the end of the day, his name is Mark Milton and he's a ninth grade history teacher. Now, this is where we see Hyperion. He meets up with Reed Richards. Now, Reed Richards, he isn't Mr. Fantastic. He isn't in the Fantastic Four. He's just a really smart guy. Now, Reed Richards, he lets him know that there's something wrong with the negative zone portal. Something's going on, and Hyperion, his biggest concern is that Dr. Doom escaped, but they're not 100% sure. It's a very big possibility right now, because that's where they send all their big bads. If they can't handle them, if they're too much, they send them to the negative zone. And so what's happened is that there's been a breakout. You know, this place is highly unstable antimatter universe. It was never meant to be used as a prison. And so when they all sent Dr. Doom through there to be imprisoned, others were waiting for that thin tissue between universes to become thin enough for them to break through. And that's exactly what they did. Now, while most of these individuals that broke through, they're nothing extravagant that he can't handle, but some of these guys are some heavy hitters. And so he's going to have a big day of work cut out for himself. And his first encounter is with Gladiator and his Imperial Guard. They were attacking Cape Canaveral, trying to commandeer a space flight back home. You know, the Super Guardians, they once used to be his friends. They were his friends until they became infected. But as it stands today, he doesn't have the time for mercy. He doesn't have the time to be gentle with them, because they're not the only ones who escaped. And this is where we pick up with another fight going on with Mr. Beyonder. And Mr. Beyonder, you know, he's just out here warping reality, turning a bunch of people in a small podunk town into flying sharks. And so it's one fight after another that he's having to deal with. And we see him make his way to the Daily Bugle. Inside the Daily Bugle, we see Peter Parker. And Peter Parker, right now, he's terrified for his life. Now, Peter Parker, he believes himself to be like the best friend of Hyperion. But he's really not. He's just more or less tolerated. But while he's sitting here having a conversation, saving Peter Parker's life, who in this case is not Spider-Man, this is when outside he hears Ultron. Now, Ultron is a literal giant mechanical kaiju, if you will. You know, Henry Pym used to be a friend of his. He was a good individual until one day there was an accident. He was consumed literally by Ultron, and now they're kind of one. But more than anything, he's Ultron, and he wreaks havoc anywhere he goes. But this is not any kind of match for Hyperion. Hyperion literally just folds him up like a soda can, like it's absolutely nothing. We're just seeing the true extent. If Superman ever actually did come into the Marvel Universe, how many individuals wouldn't actually be able to stop him? How much ridiculousness he could literally destroy. But with all of these individuals that he's been rounding up, there's still one more left. And it's the worst one of all. It's going to be the hardest fight for him. And this is when we pick up in his 9th grade high school class. And we have somebody sitting in the front of the class, but it's not Hyperion. No, it is the one and only Hulk. And he's sitting here, he's trying to talk to these kids. In the best way he can. You know, Bruce Banner, he doesn't really have that much of a capability of having full sentences, being able to really articulate what he's trying to convey. And so it's really coming up like a big jumbled mess. But this is where we see Hyperion. He comes bashing through the door and he tells him, you know, Banner, get the heck out of my class. I don't know how you found out my secret identity, but you're gonna pay for this. You're not gonna put these kids in danger. And the whole time Hyperion is beating the crap out of the Hulk. He's trying to get information, trying to figure out how Bruce Banner knew who he was, how he knew to come to the high school, how he knew where he teached. And Hulk, he lets him know while fighting back and giving him some good punches that Hulk now knows too much. He knows that the world is wrong, that the people are wrong, and that Hulk's friends are missing. And he asks, where are Earth's mightiest heroes? Where are the Avengers? But this fight, it keeps escalating. These are literal titans sitting here battling. And as this fight continues on, Hulk eventually gets hold of Hyperion. He grabs hold of him and he's going to crush him. Hyperion's scared right now. He's legitimately worried that the Hulk might actually try to kill him. And the thing is, he knows that the Hulk, he might actually be able to do it. And so he has to do something that he's going to regret right now because he doesn't want to do it. At one time, Bruce Banner, he had hope for him. He hoped that he would be a force for good, but he knows now that that's not possible. And he uses his heat vision and he beams the crap out of Hulk. He does it until Hulk dies. And he has to do it. He has to do it 24 times. He has to kill the Hulk 24 times before the Hulk finally stops coming back. And right now, he's more just a radioactive pile of goo. But the last thing he said before he died was, where is Steve? And this fight comes to an end. Now, picking up the next day, we have him teaching his high school class. And as he's sitting here teaching them just, basic history, he's going over all of the essays that he graded. And that's when he comes across the one that's talking about Steve Rogers. And this gets him thinking. And so he goes off. He goes off to do some research. And he digs in some old Pentagon files to try to find the location of where Steve Rogers might be. Now, from what he could tell, everything was done at the time to try to recover his remains. Still though, he checked icebergs. He checked every inch of the seafloor with his own eyes. And there was absolutely no trace of Steve Rogers. But he did find something else. Deep inside an ice fissure, he found evidence that somebody had been there recently. Not only had somebody been there, but somebody had pulled something out of the ice. And so to try to fully understand what's going on here, he needs some time to meditate. And so he goes into the sun. He goes into the sun to charge himself up and to give himself some real clarity. He does this to remind himself of the truth. And that truth in his mind is Captain America is long dead. Hyperion is the super scintille of liberty. From now and for all tomorrows. And this world is the truth of all truths. So regardless if this world is fake or not, he's going to defend it and make sure that this reality stays as the true reality, as the only reality. Now this is when we're taken to the next day. And in the next day, he's kind of giving it another history lesson. And in this history lesson, he's talking about all the triumphs and the tribulations that have come from individuals like Power Princess and Namor and a few other individuals. But as he's teaching this class, he hears a whoosh, and then a homeless man, it appears to be a homeless man, sitting outside of the school. And so of course this individual isn't met by a teacher, but this individual is met by Hyperion. And he asks this guy, can I help you with something? And for the most part, the homeless individual, he's not doing much of a small talk. And he lets him know, like if you don't have business here, if you don't have anything to actually do here at the school, I think I suggest it's time for you to leave. You should get on your way. And the homeless man lets him know, he's just a homeless vet that the world doesn't care about. But it's nice that this school has its own superhero that's literally watching after it. Now, as this conversation is going on, Hyperion is trying to figure out why his atomic vision is shorting out anytime he tries to scan this individual. And Hyperion, he asks him, do I know you from somewhere? Is there somewhere that we might have met before? And the old homeless vet just says, no, I'm nobody of importance. I'm someone that's easily forgettable. But he goes to shake his hand. And as these two shake hands, Hyperion thinks to himself that it actually hurts. His grip is actually strong. And in this individual's presence, he feels weak around him. for some reason. Now, Hyperion wants him to come with him, but before he even gets the opportunity, he's whooshed away. And just like that, he's gone, without a trace. And this is where he pops up because Blade is the one that brought him in there. Brought him in there to kind of see how the world is. And this old vet, he tells Blade, he tells him he's sorry, that he's seen enough and he understands now. You know, first he got woken up and the first thing he sees is a freaking vampire. You know, the reaction is to punch and run. But he's seen and he's heard enough to know that the Blade is right and that this is all wrong. Because while he was in the ice, he missed so much. Because this individual, this old homeless guy, this veteran is none other than Captain America. And Blade lets him know that he should probably sit down because Blade is about to let him know everything. He's going to let him know everything that's been stolen from them. He's going to tell him about the Avengers. And Cap tells him, you know, don't tell me. You need to show me. Because between the two of them, they have a lot of work to do. Alright guys, so this issue, it picks us up and it's kind of a little backstory on who Stan Lee is, on who Blur is. You know, he's an individual that's not just fast, but he's smart. You know, he's got mystic hacks that let him watch 12 different televisions from 12 other dimensions. At times, he'll laugh so hard, he vibrates literally through his furniture. But one of the biggest things about him is that his mind works so fast as he constantly is losing train of thought. He burns through shoes so fast, his shoe wardrobe is bigger than most people's houses. You know, this is a guy who literally is working 20 phones at the same time. He's talking to 10 different girls. He's got dates with 5 different girls. He's someone that can multitask on a level that is incomprehensible to anything we understand. And while he has all of this stuff going on, he doesn't really have time for a personal life. Because with the Squadron Supreme, he's always out doing something. He's always having someone to save or some mission to go on. You know, ever since that fateful jog that he took through the strange mystical mist, which magically altered his body chemistry, he went from mail carrier, window washer, dog walker, barista, computer programmer, to a full-fledged speedster. Now, as he's sitting here filling us in on all of this information, he goes to tell us about a story, but he gets sidetracked. He gets sidetracked and tells us about a mission that he went on where he got trapped in a secret Russian lair of Soviet super bears, hailing from a city known as Grizzly City. And so really it's showing two things here. It's showing how fast his mind jumps all over the place. And two, it's showing what is actually out there and how easily he can traverse dimensions without any kind of issues. And while he's telling us the story of these bears, like, he realizes that he gets sidetracked. And the issue is sometimes he doesn't even remember what year it is. He doesn't remember if this event already happened, if it's going to happen, or if it is happening right now. He has traveled time so much that sometimes he gets confused. He doesn't remember exactly what time era he's in. But this is when he starts to fill us in on exactly what's going on right now in present day situation. Because this all started in Washington, D.C. And this is where we see the Blur getting chased down by Silver Witch. And she is doing her best to try to catch him using super speed hexes, trying to get the Blur taken down so she can finally have her revenge. Because Scarlet Witch, or Silver Witch in this, she blames the Blur for the death of her brother, for the death of Quicksilver. And as they're sitting here having this super race, he's cocky. He knows he's faster. He knows that he is better than her. And so the whole time they're doing this, he's live streaming it to all of his social media followers, kind of giving them a rundown of exactly what's going on here. And he's just letting everybody know, like, right now he's being attacked by the Silver Witch because she blames him for the death of her no-good brother, whose speed power she had absorbed after he burned himself out trying to keep up with Blur. And he tells everyone, you know, post in the comments, let me know how you want me to take down this rogue. But the Silver Witch, she has a trick up her sleeve, and we see her use her powers and literally rip the soul out of Blur. You know, his cockiness, his arrogance, it's finally caught up with him. Nighthawk has always said that this is his biggest downfall and that it could be the cause of his death one day. And now he's sitting here realizing how badly he just messed up. And this is where we see the Silver Witch standing over his body with his soul wrapped up, letting him know that he needs to wake up and stand up because she wants him to die exactly how Quicksilver did, on his feet and screaming. And so what's happening here is the Silver Witch, she kind of took a chunk of his soul with her chaos magic, and then she dragged him into the Dread Dimension. Just imagine the worst place possible in your mind and times it by 10, and that's what the Dread Dimension is. And as it stands, all the witch has to do is keep Blur astral self away from his physical form, from his physical body. And doing this, he will wither away and slowly die. And so the race is on. The race through the Dread Dimension. And we see the Blur take off, making his way through the mindless that are in the Dread Dimension. And he even gives credit to the Silver Witch. Not only did she outsmart him, but she is fast. She's very fast. But this also isn't the Blur's first time with a super race through the impossible. He has literally raced from one side of the multiverse all the way to the other, against death itself and her ring-powered infinity chopper. He's outran an army of masquerading microscopic Ultrons through Hyperion's lower intestines. He's even raced through time itself to stop Doom 2099 and keep him from making about the worst muck-up of American history ever. But this is what gives him an idea, because he can run faster than light and vibrate out of sync of himself sometimes. And he'll go streaking through his own timeline. And next thing he knows, he's re-racing some of his greatest showdowns, to include none other than Johnny Blaze, which in this reality, Johnny Blaze is known as the Ghost Runner. And these two, they had raced so hard and so long that Johnny Blaze, his bones literally melted. But finally, we see him catching up to the Silver Witch. And as he's catching up, the Silver Witch, she can feel his power fading. Not only can she feel this, but she can feel a rift in this reality. She knows that something feels off. And she thinks maybe if they end up killing Blur, then it may reverse something. And this is when Blur shows up trying to get his soul. And the Silver Witch is letting him know, like, a soul shouldn't be that easy to disconnect from a body. There is something unnatural about you being alive. And this is where she really shows him how much of a nothing he really is. And this is where she takes his speed with 3 simple words: no more speed. And just like that, Blur is a clumsy, regular dude. You know, the next thing he knows, he feels like he's getting stuck in liquid adamantium, like he can barely move. And he can see her just slowly walking away, but there's nothing he can do. He feels as if he is completely helpless. He goes to stand up to move with some kind of purpose, but he has nothing in the tank whatsoever. And as he drops to his knees, he remembers a moment from years ago in Tibet, the mystical monastery where he really learned how to control his powers. And this is actually kind of sad right here, because in the beginning, you know, Stanley, he had such a hard time because he couldn't go to sleep. He couldn't steady his mind long enough to be able to go to sleep. Everything was running 1,000 times a minute. And so at this point, he hasn't slept for months, and it's soon and slowly driving him mad. But up in these mountains, he learned how to slow himself down, how to take that time and really be able to calm his mind, to be able to control his powers. You know, there's just some races you can't win by running. It took him a long time to learn that lesson. It took him 17 days to be exact. Sitting there, staring at a dumb flower, starving, going insane. It took him 17 days to see what the flower had to show him. You know, his mind, it moves so fast sometimes, he forgets even who he is. But in this moment, he remembers that he is Stanley Stewart, that he is the Blur, he is the fastest mortal alive. Because at the end of the day, Blur knows what it is to see, to truly see, with all his focus and all of his eyes. To see the life racing fast past him, just beyond the doors of his perception. And to see everything, you have to slow it down. And that's exactly what he does. You know, there's life all around people that they rarely recognize, and that would truly terrify them because it's dimensions that we can't even see. But his eyes can take it. And this is where we see the Blur come riding in on a wraith whale. He comes riding in and crashing the party of Silver Witch. And it doesn't take long, though it doesn't show us, he beats the Scarlet Witch. He beats Silver Witch. And he gets his soul back from her. Using the whale to get back to their dimension, he drops Wanda off at the old home in Ravencroft with all the rest of the super lunatics. Now, as it stands, he doesn't necessarily have his speed power back yet. He's got to wait for this hex to wear off. But we pick up a couple days later, and it seems that the hex had to have worn off because now he's preparing for a race. And we see him stretching. We see him getting ready to go for one of the best races he's ever gone for. And this is where he races against Dr. Spectrum. Now, this is where we're taken to Ravencroft. And inside Ravencroft, we see Bullseye. Bullseye messing with some other inmates, if you will, inside of Ravencroft, threatening to kill them with merely a tooth. And as he's sitting here threatening this guy, we see a little rat come crawling in. And as the rat comes crawling in, it literally is on fire. And it comes up to Bullseye and just starts burning him. You know, somebody is trying to keep all the evil that is inside here, trying to keep it in check from hurting anybody else that's inside here. And that person trying to keep everything in check is the Phoenix, aka Echo. Because right now, the Phoenix is at Ravencroft. She's at Ravencroft because she's confused. She doesn't really understand what's going on. She knows that something's wrong with reality, you know, and she believes that it can't be a coincidence that she just gained this cosmic power of the Phoenix whenever all of this happened. You know, she woke up and realized that the reality she knew was gone and somehow remade during the night. And while she can't understand everything that the Phoenix Force can do, she does know that it's a gluttonous beast that is always hungry, the way a bonfire hungers for a barrel of gasoline. If the whole world went away, she has to question if it's because she couldn't control her powers. You know, and she knows that she could leave Ravencroft at any time she wanted. She could stand up and just fly away, but she doesn't, because that's what the Phoenix would do. And right now, sometimes just being an echo of what comes before isn't enough. Sometimes you have to be different. Now, as she's sitting here on the rooftop contemplating literally her entire existence, this is when we see the arrival of Blade. Not only Blade, but of Captain America as well. And Captain America lets her know right off the bat, like straight up, like, your power, it literally terrifies me. Even in the hands of someone who's wielded it for years. And according to Blade, the last we saw, you had just gotten a hold of the Phoenix. Or it had gotten a hold of you. A power that can literally destroy worlds. But that just happens to be exactly what they need right now. They need to be able to burn this whole reality down and hopefully bring back the world that they lost. But they're going to need a lot more than a shield and some fangs. And this is where Captain America lets her know that they are putting a team together. And without hesitation, she is already in. Alright guys, as we dive into issue number 4, we pick up on the blue area of the moon. And here we see many races from all over the galaxy. We see Kree, we see Skrull, we see a little bit of everybody here. And they have all gathered because it's time to take somebody out. They have all gathered to hire some individuals, to hire some bounty hunters. And this is when we see the baddest bounty hunter in the entire universe. That bounty hunter being none other than Guardians of the Galaxy's Rocket, accompanied with his faithful freaking machine gun, Groot. Now Rocket, he lets them all know that he's going to be able to take care of Dr. Spectrum. He's going to be able to take him out because that's what he's getting hired for. Everybody is tired of Dr. Spectrum being around, and with Rocket being the best bounty hunter around, they figure this is one of their last options to really take him out. But Groot, he wants to know some more information. Like, what did he do? Why is everybody so angry at him that they hire somebody so talented? And this is when we hear a voice of the Watcher. And the Watcher lets us know that every story that you have ever heard about Dr. Spectrum, it's 100% true. He knows this because he's literally watched all of them. For a long time, he was a silent witness to all of the atrocities. But one day, he could not stand silent any longer. He sought to intercede, and even though it was against his sworn duty as a Watcher, he had to do something. And because the Watcher intervened, Dr. Spectrum took his freaking eyes so that he could no longer watch anything. Now, Dr. Spectrum, he believes that everything he does is for God and country. And that's what all of them have been talking about. Every single one of them. Blur, Hyperion, and now Dr. Spectrum. They are all saying that they are doing this for God and country. They seem to be extremely religious fanatics. That mixed with the power of the Power Prism, Dr. Spectrum is literally a religious zealot. And the Watcher says that Dr. Spectrum, he must die. And this is where we pick up with Dr. Spectrum doing the freaking most. You know, Dr. Spectrum has been like a space police, kind of like a Green Lantern Corps, if you will, all of his own. And when space needs policing, he's the man they call. When there's something otherworldly headed their way, he's the one they call. When Thanos got his hands on the Infinity Rings, he is the one they called. And he straight up blew the rings off of Thanos' hand. Used a freaking machine gun and just shoots all of his fingers off. The Celestials, they believe themselves to be gods. Dr. Spectrum, he thinks otherwise. So much so that he went to the Celestials and he tore one of their heads off. He tore it off and brought it back and used it as a black site top security prison. Just to show that there is only one God out there, and that God, he's American. And this prison is where he keeps the toughest of the tough. From Super Skrull to Beta Ray Bill, all of these individuals have been locked up here. Anybody that has come to challenge him has been taken out. Now, as Dr. Spectrum is making his way away from the prison, this is when he gets ambushed by Rocket and Groot. And we see our eye patch wearing Rocket literally lay down an arsenal on top of Spectrum. Now, Dr. Spectrum, he knows exactly who this is. This is freaking Rocket Raccoon, the deadliest bounty hunter in all the galaxy. Now, based on the fighting that he is seeing from Rocket right now, he kind of laughs at him, thinks he's a joke. Like this is really the best you got. You're supposed to be the galaxy's greatest bounty hunter, and you're shooting bullets and rockets at me. But this is when Rocket pulls out his secret weapon. That secret weapon being Groot. He pulls him up like a freaking machine gun and starts firing away. And this is where we see tiny little mini Groots, bullet Groots, making their way, attaching themselves onto Dr. Spectrum. Now, Dr. Spectrum, he tries to block them off, but alas, it fails him. They come in from every direction, and they're attaching to his body, and starting to take him over. And as Groot is slowly getting inside of his body, taking over every part of him, Dr. Spectrum, he is screaming to the prism to help him. He doesn't know what to do here, and the prism is just kind of sitting there. It's not doing anything. It's kind of just letting him being taken over. And so it really looks like Rocket has won this fight. It looks like Dr. Spectrum is about to be taken out. On top of being taken over by Groot, he also uses a maggot gun and shoots these maggots at him. And he tells Groot to finish him off, take him out, and he's going to try to grab the prism. But as Rocket tries to grab it, the prism shoots down and lands directly on the face of Dr. Spectrum. And we see Dr. Spectrum, he sheds off Groot, using his power literally burning all of the little Groots. You know, even though that he bonded to this prism years ago, he still literally knows nothing about it. No science can tell him anything about it. And so he believes that that God himself chose him and gave him this thing, and that's why he's doing all of it. That's why he has the power of who he is. Believes that God gave him this power to rid space and Earth of all the abominations. And that's exactly what we see him doing here. He is literally blasting the crap out of all the Groots, and he turns his attention to Rocket, and he blasts Rocket. And we see Dr. Spectrum use his weapon and literally slice Groot in half. And it looks like Rocket's about to lose this fight. But this is when we see the freaking Star Brand appear on Rocket's chest. And he takes all of his power and he shoots it directly into the face of Dr. Spectrum. And this obviously throws him off. He takes that hit and he's confused. Like, Star Brand shouldn't even be in this reality. But the last individual that carried the Star Brand, he tossed them back into the negative zone. And so right now he's super curious on how Rocket was able to come in contact with it. But Rocket tells him, you shouldn't even be worried about that. What you'd be worried about right now is what I'm gonna do with it. And this is where we see Rocket literally create a giant cannon that shoots freaking stars. And he launches this weapon. He shoots it at Dr. Spectrum, but Dr. Spectrum literally laughs at him. He's like, dude, are you kidding me? Like, you think this is the first time I've had a star thrown at me? You think this is the first time I've had something like this? Like, I literally eat this kind of stuff for breakfast. Like, I wake up in the morning and this is my morning routine. And he tells him, I've literally absorbed entire realities. I've absorbed them into my prism, and now he's going to give him a taste. He's going to give him literally an entire galaxy full of cancer, and he shoots these monsters at him and they take over Rocket. And this is where Dr. Spectrum, he takes this opportunity. While Rocket's guard is down, he grabs him and he shoves him into a supernova. But he doesn't kill him. He interrogates him. He wants to find out exactly who put this bounty on his head. Now Rocket, he held out for a long time. Hours, literally holding out. The only time he starts talking is when Dr. Spectrum, he threatens his ship. And that's when he starts saying everything. And with that, the Star Brand, it fades away. It fades away as he dies. And Dr. Spectrum really has no idea where the Star Brand went. And this is where we see the mothership. We see Mothership Guardian. And its systems have detected that Rocket Raccoon, he is dead. He is perished and he is no longer with us. And this is when it starts to play a audio recording that he recorded. And the recording, it's really just saying, if you're hearing this, then I have died at this point. And if I have died, then you need to stay low. You need to stay safe. Because one day, you and the Star Brand are going to save the galaxy. Now, this is where we pick up a little bit later. And Dr. Spectrum, he's talking to the president. Talking to the president about how Star Brand managed to elude him this time. But they also learned that the Watcher is the one that hired the bounty hunters. And that soon enough, Dr. Spectrum is going to go up there and he's going to deal with this entire situation. Now, Dr. Spectrum, he's a little bit concerned right now. Concerned with the Blur. Because after the Blur had gone through the Dread universe, he was babbling on about something being wrong with the world. Like he had seen beyond and could tell that the fabric of reality had been tampered with. Now, Dr. Spectrum, he believes this to be nonsense. He believes that if there were something like this going on, someone like Dr. Spectrum would surely have seen it by now. And as they give money to the communion plate, on the money, on the bill, it freaking says, "In Mephisto, we trust." And as they look up, it is a shrine dedicated to him. Alright gang, so as we jump into issue number 5, we see Kraven the Hunter. But right now, he is dressed up like Nighthawk. He's dressed up like Nighthawk and he is making his way around the asylum, just laying waste to all of the police officers around, shooting at every single one of them, killing, maiming anything that is in his path. And the reason that we know this isn't Nighthawk is because he really tries to have the same kind of code that Batman does. But he sees the world much, much differently. His parents never really wanted a son. That's a conclusion that he came to on his own. Not something that his parents necessarily told him, but he saw through their actions. That was something that was made clear to him as a child long before they ever passed away. In his eyes, they had abandoned him to butlers and boarding schools long before they ended up getting themselves killed. But still to this day, he really does try to use that and tell himself that the work he does every night is for them, to avenge them. But those are just lies that he continuously tells himself. Because at the end of the day, he truly knows that when he goes out there every night, everything that he does this for himself. Because when you grow up without love, without without anybody truly caring about you. He feels like he needed to fill that cavity with something else. If he couldn't be loved, if no one would love him, then he would be feared. But he also recognizes that he's not special. You could ask anybody else within their Squadron Supreme, and they would simply tell you stories that, if not matched his, were 10 times worse than his. Because at the end of the day, they're all broken. They're all trying to fill that hole every single night. Trying to fill it by fighting crime. And as this story moves along, this is where we see Kraven get surrounded in some gas very quickly, and in a matter of seconds, he's already tied up and the police are moving in on him. And the police realize immediately that Nighthawk is now on the scene. The one-man SWAT team has finally rolled in, and so the police, they're gonna do a perimeter around the asylum and let Nighthawk do his thing. Now, inside this asylum, it's full of murderers, it's full of lunatics, it's full of the worst individuals that the streets have ever seen. And Nighthawk, he's one of the individuals that put most of these guys here. But the thing about it is, when he looks into their eyes, when he looks into the eyes of these lunatics and maniacs, he's not disgusted by the horrendous crimes they've committed. He's disgusted at how deeply he truly does understand their rage. And every night he goes out and faces these guys. Faces the scum, the lunatics and the maniacs that arise to come and greet him and face him off. He thinks to himself that could be him. Without the power and grace of Mephisto, he feels like that could be him every single night. And it takes us back to the one bad day idea. The idea that, one bad day can make somebody snap. And Nighthawk seems to be a prime candidate for that. He's an individual that sees himself as bad, sees himself no better than the enemy, and that any day he could actually snap. He's in full recognition of all of this. But all of this understanding, it makes him that much more violent. It makes him that much more angrier. It makes him want to punch that much harder. Because anything he is punching, he sees it as a reflection of himself. And so he has so much self-loathing that he takes all of that anger out on the individuals that he confronts. And so we see Nighthawk making his way through the asylum. Inside the asylum, it is littered with the bodies of massacred guards and physicians. And getting deeper into the facility, this is when he runs into all of the prisoners. And as he's facing off with all of them, this is where we see Black Skull. And this is all some elaborate plan to be able to get Nighthawk to kill, to become the person that everybody knows he's going to eventually be. They all want him to show the murderous side he has, to make him break his code. Now Nighthawk is wasting no time getting into this fight, facing off with everybody in here, having octopuses thrown at him, and we see Black Skull, we see the symbiote attached to him trying to get off and attach itself to Nighthawk, thinking of all the things that it could truly accomplish with the two of them combined. And in the middle of this fight, this is when we see Deadpool. Now, not the Deadpool that we know and love. This is a Deadpool that's been stuck in this asylum for who knows how many years. And he hits a sledgehammer, making a vibration that bothers the symbiote enough for him to back off of Nighthawk, and Nighthawk doesn't see this as a grateful thing. He immediately just starts attacking at Deadpool, takes Deadpool down, and he flees the room. Because while Black Skull and everybody else was sitting here facing him off, this wasn't the final ordeal. This wasn't the final match. This was just the warm-up. Because Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin, currently has Gwen Stacy. And in this reality, Gwen Stacy, she's the sidekick of Nighthawk, going by the name of Nightbird. And Goblin has Gwen hanging her over a ledge, threatening to drop her. And Gwen shouts out to him, letting him know that this is all a ploy to try to get him to kill, to try to get him to break his code. And she tells him no matter what, don't give in to it. And with that, the Green Goblin, he drops her without hesitation. And we see Nighthawk jump into action as quick as Green Goblin's fingers release Gwen, and running over there, he catches her just in the nick of time, and rescuing her, trying to uncuff her, not realizing that the Green Goblin used the goblin gas on her, changing her psyche and making her more crazy. And Gwen starts attacking him. And now he can't underestimate her. He has trained her for quite some time now. And even though she's under the gas intoxication, this is not something that he's taking lightly. And we see him use his Hawkerings and they get stuck into her arm. And he apologizes, but he's like, this has to end. But Gwen turns to him, pulling the Hawkerings out of her arm and apologizes, saying, the gas may be making me crazy, just crazy enough to see exactly what needs to happen here. And we see her take the Hawkerings and throw them directly into Green Goblin's face. Now Nighthawk, he's making his way over to him, letting him know that he's not going to let him die. But Green Goblin, he's not having it. He's going to make sure that he dies. And he jams the Hawkerings back into his face. And with this mess, this fight being done and over with, this is where he radios in to Commissioner Luke Cage, asking for paramedics and to get help as soon as possible. But this is when Green Goblin, with his dying breath, tells Nighthawk something very interesting. That the whole reason he threw this shindig was because he had a request. Because you hear the craziest things when you have cellmates like the Silver Witch. And he just wanted Nighthawk to know, on behalf of everybody here at Ravencroft, that they don't want the world to change back. Because they really do enjoy the way the world is. Now, picking back up in the Hawk Cave, he's going through all of this information. Because all of the inmates in the asylum, all of them are accounted for except for one. Except for one by the name of Echo, aka Maya Lopez. Now, up to this point, Nighthawk, he's not sure if the world had changed. But even if it did, what does it matter? This is the world that they have. This is the world that he is living in, and he can't help but feel this is the world that he belongs in. But the reason he's investigating Echo is because her escape, it took place long before everybody else broke out. Now Nighthawk, he knows who Blade is, and he sees Blade in the security cameras. Breaking Echo out, but he doesn't recognize one individual. One individual we know as Captain America, as Steve Rogers. And we can only imagine that Nighthawk is now slowly piecing this together because he sees the Star-Spangled Shield. Now, taking place sometime in the near future, this is where we see Nighthawk battling some kind of assassin ninja. Or at least that's what it appears to be. Now, this fight is absolutely awesome. We see them going in hand-to-hand combat, and neither seems to have the upper hand. Both seem to be on the same level of playing field when it comes to being able to have a good fight, have a good brawl. And in the midst of this fight, we see Nighthawk use his Hawkerings and throw them at this mysterious individual. The individual grabbing a sword and cutting the Hawkerings right in half. And this throws Nighthawk off. He's not sure what to make of this, because those Hawkerings, they are made of adamantium. And so he has to ask where that sword came from, and who the heck is this individual? And why were they trying to sneak into the Squadron Supreme headquarters? But the individual says nothing, just looks at Nighthawk and then touches his wrist. Touching his wrist, we see him teleport out. And he is teleported to Northeast Africa. Now, this individual has been looking for some secrets that the Squadron Supreme has been hiding. He knows that they are out there, and he has continuously been looking for quite some time now. Because a few years ago, he found an ancient dead celestial buried deep under the ice in the Arctic, almost like it was calling to him to help it rise. And we see the individual deactivate its cloaking, only to reveal that it is none other than Black Panther himself. But Black Panther is not alone, because over his shoulder, this is where he sees Blade and Captain America. And Captain America has come to let him know that he knows that they don't belong here. And he's pretty sure that Black Panther has come to the same realization as well. And it's time that they team up, guys. Together. So as we jump into issue number 6, this story is going to be following the Power Princess, or Marvel's version of DC Comics' Wonder Woman. And this story immediately jumps us into the fray, because right now she's going against the Algog. Now this is a very different reality, and in this reality, Algog has eaten Odin. He's eaten pretty much all of the remaining gods except for Power Princess. She seems to be one of the last remaining from any kind of mythology. And with the Power Princess being the last remaining god, Algog feels like it is his duty to know what her flesh tastes like. But she is no ordinary god, coming from the land of Utopia Isle, the island of just women. Women that could drink you under the table and take you in battle any day of the week. And as they're having this battle, as they're having this fight, Algog tells her that it's hopeless. At one point, he has already halfway devoured her. It was just by luck that she was able to escape. But Power Princess, she had a trick up her sleeve, and she lets him know that she anticipated that it was all part of her plan. Because inside of his stomach are her gauntlets. The gauntlets that are attached to her soul, and they come to her whenever they are summoned. So in other words, Power Princess calls her gauntlets, and we see Algog, his guts literally ripped out and spewing onto the ground. Now this fight is over. It's done with. Power Princess has yet to fight somebody she can't take down. And this is just yet another foe that she can add to her collection, turning them all to stone after their defeat. She adds them to her little yard that she's created here. Having individuals like Null, the King in Black, Giantess, Tigra, all these individuals that she's captured, she's defeated over the years. And she's placed them here at the foot of the Statue of Liberty. Because inside the head of Lady Liberty herself, this is where the Power Princess takes up residence. This is where she calls home. This island is where she keeps all of her trophies. And as she sits here, completely bored out of her mind, nothing to do, hasn't killed anybody in a while, she goes to fill her drink using the Siege Perilous. Kind of like a magic mirror here. A mirror that would take you to unknown worlds and places of unimaginable thought. But Power Princess, she just uses it to fill her chalice. And as she sits here and drinks in solitude, she can only help but think of things to do, people to call, possibly Hyperion, but really she thinks about the good old days. She thinks of people like Namor, because back in the day, they used to rock together, and definitely in more ways than one. And she misses the days of making love to him on the ocean floor after they killed a whole bunch of freaking Nazis and they're getting eaten by sharks. And then she thinks to herself, maybe she just needs a good war, a good battle. She knows that she could tip Nighthawk into fighting Hyperion, that they could cause a civil war, and she would do it just for her amusement. And as she's thinking all of these thoughts, this is when we hear a giant crack of lightning, and this startles her. It startles everybody, to include the mirror. And so, not knowing what this is, she says, "Wake up." And with those words, we see the mighty Hercules come out of his stone prison, and we see the Power Princess use her chain on Hercules, demanding to know what he hears as they see another crack of lightning. And Hercules, he just laughs. And not getting the answers she wants, she turns him back into stone. But she knows this isn't mere lightning. She knows this isn't mere thunder. She knows the cries of a god when she hears them. And so she heads back inside, trying to find a weapon, digging through her armory. She can only think that there is some kind of ghost that's in unrest in the heavens. And so she's gonna begin her search in the greatest graveyard of all the gods, where the Mangog became the final Allfather, where began the Ragnarok Wars. The wars that left the heavens hollow, where she salvaged the last pieces of a broken bridge to forge her axe known as the Rainbow Axe. And using this axe, she breaks her way into the realm known as Asgard. A once great and powerful realm, now it is nothing but ruins. The vegetation has taken over everything, and there is no sign of life in any direction. And this is when something flies by her, some kind of blue flicker. And this is where Power Princess, she sees none other than the one and only Thor. and asking who he is. At this point, he's not even sure who he is. The only thing that he truly knows is that he's sober. He's sober for the first time in a very, very long time. And so she tries to pry some kind of information, trying to see if he is the cause to all of this storm. And he tells the Power Princess that it's not the storm that is unnatural, but it is this place. And he is slowly beginning to remember who he is. And as he begins to remember who he is realizing that the rest of the world has forgotten who they are. But as he gathers his wits about him, he looks to the Power Princess and he asks who she is and how it is possible that she was carrying that axe. Now the Power Princess, she wastes no time getting this fight kicked off, throwing the rainbow axe, only to be deflected by the little blue glimmer of light that is surrounding Thor right now. And she jumps in on him, getting close enough to be able to use her invisible sword. And in the midst of all of this fight, he's still trying to figure out what's going on. What happened to Odin? What happened to Asgard? What happened to these great halls? And as she is sitting here kicking his butt, she's also informing him that the Ragnarok Wars, they pretty much took over everything. And most of the gods, they died. They died in these wars, and which ones didn't die, Mangog came and just took out whatever was left, making him the final Allfather. And Power Princess, she just sat back and watched. She didn't intervene, she didn't even care to bother with it. She let the gods have their war. And Thor, sitting here injured, we see a blast of wind come from him, sending the Power Princess flying back in the opposite direction. Now at this point, the Power Princess, she's getting tired of this. Not only that, but this little blue blur that keeps flying around protecting him, she can't figure out what the heck in the world that thing is. But this entire fight, if we can even call that, because Thor is just getting his bell rung here, she's taunting him, saying that no one misses the old gods. No one misses them because they have the Power Princess, the one who defeated the Allgog herself. And as we see Thor just continuing to get the crap beat out of him, he finally starts to remember who he truly is. And this is when he grabs that little blue blur, because that blue blur is none other than Mjolnir, the hammer of the heavens. And we see him transform into the Lord of Living Lightning. We see the Prince of Asgard rise and remember who he is. Not only that, but he remembers everything. He remembers everything and so much more. And in a flash of lightning, Thor leaves this fight. He takes off and Power Princess is left sitting there trying to figure out where the heck he just went. Now, picking up at Squadron Supreme headquarters, we have the Power Princess trying to go over who this might have been. Because in their world, in their reality, there is very, very limited information on who Thor is. There's rumors and thoughts of a lost son of Odin, but that's really the extent of it. Because they're saying that this lost son, he was banished by Odin, and no one ever saw him again. And Power Princess, she scoured Asgard looking for where he might have gone, but there's no sign of him whatsoever. But what is truly ringing in her ears is the last thing that he said, because he said that he remembered the Avengers. And so she has to ask Squadron Supreme, who are the Avengers? Now in these last few pages, we see a bunch of series of events going on. What we're really seeing is the rise of the Power Princess. From adolescence to adulthood, everything that Thor should have been doing, all the enemies he should have been conquering, he wasn't. For what seemed like an eon, he sat here and he drank. He drank over and over and over again, mead after mead. And with all of this, Thor begins to get even more angry than he already is, because the way he sees it, they stole his life from him. They stole everything that he holds dear. All his accomplishments that he should have been doing, Power Princess took that from him. And so this revenge, this rage that is burning inside of him, he's ready to unleash it. And as he sits here in the sky contemplating all of this, this is when we see the Phoenix fly up to him and offer to join a new team that is being assembled to fight against the Squadron Supreme and this reality. Alright guys, as we dive into issue number 7, we are brought a couple years into the past. And right now we are in the midst of a civil war. A civil war between Hyperion and Nighthawk. Because as it stands, they have been trying to pass legislation for a superhero registration, something that Nighthawk, a politician, has strongly disagreed with. So much so that they have taken this to the streets and they have been battling hero versus hero. Most of Connecticut is sitting here in ruins. But Hyperion, he knows the truth about why all of this is beginning. This is more than just about a piece of legislation. And Hyperion tells him, you're the smartest, scariest man in every room. Congratulations for that. But at the end of the day, Power Princess, she loves me. And he tells him that he needs to live to learn with this. Because if he can't, as a friend, he's telling him that he is going to die bitter and broken, just like his parents. But before he can get that full sentence out, he is hit with a blast from Nighthawk. Nighthawk, who currently is attached to a symbiote. Not only that, but he also got the eye of Agamotto from the Squadron's armory, a weapon that can hurt Hyperion. But Hyperion tells him, even with you getting all of these advancements, even with you making yourself more powerful, at the end of the day, no one is going to win in a civil war. And we see Hyperion throw Nighthawk through buildings, through billboards, and eventually ends up carrying him up to space to try and see how the symbiote likes being put on the sun. But that's what will bring us to present day. And in present day, Power Princess and the entire squadron are sitting down right now, and she is telling them that she knows that they have had their differences. Some of these differences have been event level threats at times, but it is time yet again to set aside these differences because now they are facing a new threat, a threat that they need to stand together and fight. Now she tells them she doesn't know who they are, she only knows what they call themselves. And they call themselves the Avengers. Lets them know, he's flown all over the galaxy, all over this planet, and never met any individuals calling themselves this. And Hyperion, he says that he doesn't know anything either. He doesn't know this name Avengers, but he does know that something is off. Something is going weird right now. And this is where he kind of opens up. And he lets them all know that he's had a rather troubling week. There was something that Bruce Banner had said to him the other day as he was killing him, and that something sent him searching in the Arctic, where he found someone in the ice, or at least where someone was in the ice, someone that had been long forgotten and left there. And Power Princess tells him this isn't making any sense, and he knows this. He knows that none of this is making sense. And that seems to be the prime problem. There seems to be something wrong with the world. Something that seems to be right in front of their faces, but they just can't see it. Now, Dr. Spectrum, he sees this to be complete nonsense. He thinks they're just blabbering on and have no idea what they're talking about. And as everybody's having this discussion, Power Princess looks over at Nighthawk because this entire time, he hasn't said a single word. And so the world's greatest detective, you would think that he has something to say on this subject. And when prompted, when they ask him his thoughts on this, his only question is to Hyperion because he asks, where in the Arctic did all of this happen? And that's what will bring Dr. Spectrum and Blur to the Arctic. They've come to the location where Steve Rogers once was. And Dr. Spectrum, using his power prism to try to pick up any kind of unique signatures that might be present. Signatures that may represent something like Hyperion, some kind of alien race, anything that can give them a clue to who this individual may have been. But after doing a scan, he doesn't find anything out of the normal. Hyperion up in space, he's come across the aircraft of Rocket Raccoon, the spaceship. Now he tears this thing apart, but he doesn't find anything. He doesn't find Starbrand, he doesn't find any clues to any kind of Avengers. The only thing he did find was Groot, a little plant that kept on calling its name. And Hyperion, he said that he took care of it. And with that, we see a giant explosion and Rocket Raccoon's his spaceship literally goes up in flames. And I don't think I've ever hated anybody more in my life than I do right now after Hyperion just killed Groot. But that's what will take us to Nighthawk and Power Princess. And right now they are going over all of the information they currently have. they are going over all of their video footage. This shows the Avengers showing up there and rescuing Echo. You know, they see the Star-Spangled Man, they see Blade, but what really stands out to them is the Phoenix. Because this is a force that they thought was dead. Power Princess killed Jean Grey herself, ripped her apart. But at this point in their lives, they both know that something that dies doesn't necessarily stay dead. And they learned this a couple years ago up in Canada, when they were going head to head with Weapon X. And Weapon X, he currently has his claws dug deep into Hyperion. And with his claws going into his chest, we see Hyperion die. And all of Squadron Supreme, they start rushing in to avenge his death, only to have Alpha Flight, we see them arise for their final battle. And so presumably, Hyperion lived. You know, we have to assume that he's alive now. This took place in the past. And so when they're referring to seeing things die and coming back, this is exactly what they're talking about. Now currently, Dr. Spectrum and Nighthawk, they're up in space. They're scanning the Earth right now for some kind of meteorite. A meteorite that once landed on Earth and has now been hidden from all of civilization. And Nighthawk, he has a hunch, and he tells Dr. Spectrum to make sure he scans the entire continent of Africa. And that's what will bring us to Ravencroft Asylum. Inside of Ravencroft, we have Power Princess and Blur currently investigating and interrogating Goblin, because they need to find out as much information as they can about Echo, about the individual who now holds the power of the Phoenix. Now, he doesn't really give us much information. He taunts, he teases, he jokes about how he killed the Silver Witch, or he led to her killing herself. And he tries to manipulate Power Princess, tries to get inside of her mind. And that's because Goblin knows one specific thing about her. That when Power Princess arrived on the world of man, when she returned home, she brought back with her a virus. This virus ended up killing the entirety of her utopia. All her people had succumbed to this. Now, Power Princess, she's not Nighthawk, she's not Hyperion, she's not any of these dudes out here trying to keep them alive. And we see her snap, breaking the glass and smashing down on his chest. We see her literally kill Goblin right here on the spot. And that's what's going to take us to a little bit later, because right now the big three, they are arguing. And usually when they argue, lots of buildings end up getting blown up, explosions are happening, and so they're a little on edge right now. Dr. Spectrum and Blur, they're down here kind of worried. So Blur decides that he's going to eavesdrop on this conversation. He's going to find out exactly what they are discussing. And of course, they're arguing about what they always do, about starting wars. Because right now, Nighthawk, he wants to go into this country without White House approval, and given the international implications, they want to be able to give President Coulson the ability to have plausible deniability. Little does Blur know, currently Dr. Spectrum, he has lines of communication open up with the president, and so the president is eavesdropping on the entirety of this conversation. But all Dr. Spectrum really knows is that they need to find out who the Avengers are, and they need to find out exactly what they want. And then Blur makes an observation, posing the question, do you ever think that life might be easier, or life used to be a lot simpler? But Dr. Spectrum tells him that the evidence is pretty clear. The evidence is right in front of you, because without them, that's what kind of world you get. One where presidents get gunned down in the street, like President Fury, the Howling Commander-in-Chief. And so they truly do believe that they are doing what is best for humanity. But that's what will take us to the African savannah. And right now, they are currently scanning for anything. Now, they know this is the location. The Prism is letting Dr. Spectrum know that whatever they're looking for, it's here. Blur running all over the place, but he's not finding a single thing. He figured if there were something hidden out here, by now he would have ran into it. But he knows that there is something there because usually he can be able to run through things. And he found something that he can't actually run through. And this is when Nighthawk, he pulls up and lets them all know that the Phoenix, the readings from the Arctic, and the star brand from Spectrum's battle in space, the atmospheric disturbances with the Asgardian, the trail of the Daywalker known as Blade, all of it leads back to this single location. So whatever is here, it is here. And this is where we see Blur start using his super speed to start hacking into the system to be able to break down the Wakanda walls. And that's exactly what we see. We see the force field start to fade, and we see Wakanda start to come into view. And Squadron Supreme, they are standing here ready to do battle, ready to fight these guys. Power Princess wanting to make the first strike, wanting to make sure that they have the element of surprise on their side before they realize that their perimeter has been breached. But this is where they realize it's already too late, because they have already figured this out. They already know who is here. And this is where we see the Phoenix. We see Thor, Starbrand, Blade, and of course the one and only Captain America. And Cap is letting them know that he doesn't think so, but he will be taking back his reality. And this is where we hear him say, "Avengers assemble." But this is when we're taken to the White House, to President Coulson having a conversation with Ross and Jameson, playing back the recording of everything that was said between Dr. Spectrum and Blur, all the incident that is about to go on, Avengers, so on and so forth. Now, Jameson and Ross, they have no idea who they're talking about, but they're immediately getting on the phone, calling the Joint Chiefs of Staff, calling everybody under the sun to start setting up meetings and figuring out exactly who these individuals they're going after might be. And while these two are jumping into high gear, we see the president reach into his desk. Inside his desk is a pistol. He pulls it out and he guns down both Ross and Jameson in cold blood. Standing over their bodies, he lets his secretary know to prepare a press release of the assassinations of both Ross and Jameson by sleeper agents of Wakanda. And out of the shadows, this is where we see Mephisto. And Mephisto lets him know that he did good. Because the more people hear that word, the more they hear the word Avengers, the more cracks start to show in their little world that they have created. Now, the president lets us know that there weren't supposed to be any Avengers. There must have been something that they missed. But Mephisto says that this is nothing that can't be fixed. The only thing they have to do is kill Captain America. And right now, President Coulson, he is feeling as if he just shouldn't have left Captain America in that ice. Maybe being a little nostalgic, maybe even emotional, maybe a little sentimental, but he made a mistake. In doing this, it could unravel this entire reality that they have created. Now the question poses what to do with Squadron Supreme. Because one, they can't call them back. They could try, but Squadron Supreme probably wouldn't listen. And the issue is, if Squadron Supreme is to fall, if they fall to the Avengers, it could be the end of Mephisto and Coulson's little world they created. And so they can't call the squadron back. They can't bomb Wakanda without drawing the world's attention. And so Coulson feels like there is only one way to handle this. The same way he remade the world in the image of Mephisto, by doing it himself using a pandemonium cube. So as we're diving into this issue, we're picking up with President Coulson. And in the last issue, we learned that he is the one that is working with Mephisto, using a cosmic cube to change all of reality how he wanted it to be. And the backstory they give us is he's somebody that didn't want to be a superhero. Though he did admire them growing up, he wanted to be the one that superheroes and these gods, they all looked up to. The individual that has power above all of them. Now, right now, President Coulson, he's leaving the White House and he's headed for Africa. Because right now, Squadron Supreme is going against the Avengers. And Coulson also believed that he had gotten rid of the Avengers. He believed that this had all happened using the cosmic cube. But because Blade is somehow immune to this power, because he was able to see this cloaked universe, something that everybody else had forgotten, him saying the word Avengers, it started to break this reality, started to create cracks in it. And with Coulson not actually getting rid of Captain America, with just leaving him frozen there in the ice, it led the possibility for the Avengers to eventually be able to break through. But that's what will take us to Wakanda. And right now we have the God of Thunder going against Hyperion. And right now he is dishing everything he has at Thor, and Thor is throwing it right back at him tenfold. We have Echo, aka Phoenix, going against Power Princess. And that's going to be an extremely interesting fight because Power Princess has already killed one Phoenix before. We have Dr. Spectrum going against Starbrand. And Starbrand, right now Starbrand has a vendetta because Dr. Spectrum had killed Rocket. And so Starbrand is ready to dish out some good old revenge. We have Blur going against Black Panther. And at first, Blur thinks that this is going to be easy. Just some individual with some cat powers. But Blur learns really quick that Black Panther isn't just some ordinary individual. And we see Blur, we see Black Panther, they go for a race. We have Blade going against Nighthawk, and Captain America is currently up in the skies, trying to intercept the president, because the president and his fighter jets, they are currently trying to target Wakanda. They're going to take out anything and everything in their path, even if it means hitting Squadron Supreme. President Coulson is adamant about taking out all of Wakanda and the Avengers. And one of these fighter pilots just so happens to be Carol Danvers. Carol Danvers without the power to actually become Captain Marvel, just being a regular fighter pilot. But what we see is Captain America land on top of President Coulson's car, his flying car, and landing on top, he cuts a hole on the roof, telling the president that they need to have a talk. Coulson using the cube to try to blast Cap, only for him to deflect it with his shield. And so what we're seeing is these individual battles taking place all over Wakanda. And we see Hyperion and Thor, these two going at one another, but the issue is Hyperion is having some power malfunctions. As he is continuously battling Thor, he feels like his body is getting weaker. Every hit feels a little softer. Thor's jaw feeling stronger than his hammer. Something about Wakanda is draining his powers. And he realizes this. And he knows that he needs to hurry up and finish this fight before he is completely drained of energy. But he is looking like he is no match for him. Thor sending out a blast of lightning, picking up his hammer and bringing it down with all of his might on top of Hyperion. Picking up with Blur and Black Panther, Black Panther being able to keep up with Blur. And they're making their race across all of Wakanda. But Black Panther, he gets tired of this fight. He gets tired of all of this running around, and he ends up slitting Blur's ligaments, causing him to fall and crash to the ground. And with Blur trying to do everything he can to survive this battle, this is where we see Starbrand completely destroy the power prism. Dr. Spectrum's weapon completely just crushed into a blob of a crystal, because this is the true power of Starbrand. And this kid ready to mess somebody up, asking who the heck is next. And this is where we see Nighthawk and Blade. These two going toe to toe, Blade seemingly being able to hold his own, but Nighthawk ends up getting the upper hand, piercing Blade's chest with one of his weapons and sending a bolt of electricity shooting through his body. And up in the skies, we have Coulson and Captain America going toe to toe on top of this flying vehicle, and Coulson using the cube to the best of his abilities to try to take out Cap. And while these two are duking it out, while Coulson is shooting a blast of energy from the cube at Cap, this is where we see a jet fighter come in, piloted by none other than Carol Danvers, and using the wing ends up clipping the president. Now this point in the fight, Starbrand needed somebody else to beat up, and Phoenix needed a little bit of assistance when it came to Power Princess. And so we see a team up of Starbrand and Phoenix, primordial forces that have known each other for such a long time. And we see Starbrand, we see Phoenix completely annihilate Power Princess. Now Thor is still battling Hyperion at this point, begging him to yield because Thor doesn't want to have to kill him. And Hyperion, he finds the strength the strength to knock Thor's hammer out of his hand and send Thor flying off, and Nighthawk detonating a bomb inside the chest of Blade. Now, it doesn't appear to have killed Blade, but it has definitely immobilized him at this point. And Hyperion and Nighthawk, they have a conversation. Nighthawk, always withholding information, tells Hyperion that he has a weakness to vibranium. And that is why he is so weak in Wakanda. The longer he stays here, the weaker he gets. Vibranium is his kryptonite, and vibranium is ingrained in all of Wakanda, which makes it the perfect battlefield to fight Squadron Supreme. But these two are still standing, and they think they may have an opportunity. Because regardless if this is a fake reality, this is the reality that they know, that they have always remembered. And they are willing to fight to the death to keep things the way they are, exactly how it is. Thinking that they might be enough to take on the Avengers. But this is when we see the arrival of Black Panther, telling both of them that they aren't enough. They're not even enough for the Black Panther himself. And we see Black Panther take both Hyperion and Nighthawk on. And if anybody is able to take both of them on at the same time, it's going to be him because of his suit. And this is where we see, out of left field, Captain America come falling out of the sky, diving off just in time. And as he dives off, he does a tuck and roll, and he gives a giant uppercut to Hyperion. And this is where we see Starbrand and Phoenix use the Pandemonium Cube. With these primordial forces that have protected the Earth for eons, they can feel the energies flowing through them. Combining their power, they know exactly how to set things right. Now at this point, this battle is pretty much over. Nighthawk, being the last standing individual, he tells the Avengers that he wants everybody to be able to remember that Squadron Supreme was actually able to keep the Earth safe when they never could. He wants them all to remember that he was still standing. And with that, everything goes white. And the next thing Blade remembers is waking up in Chernobyl, surrounded by vampires trying to kill him. And everybody else, they're back at Avenger Mountain. And as far as Blade knows, all of them had a completely normal night. They are not aware of anything that has happened. Well, at least almost everyone, because this is where we see Starbrand. Now, Blade, he really doesn't understand why he was able to see through this veil. He thinks that it may have something to do with his connection to the supernatural, but as it stands, he has no idea what happened to the Pandemonium Cube. And in New York City, we see Hyperion flying around, and he seems to be lost. He seems to be looking for somebody, possibly looking for Nighthawk. And Spider-Man, he comes up to him and asks him what he could do for him. But Hyperion doesn't give him much information and just lets him know that he was looking for an old friend who doesn't seem to be here anymore. Coulson is another individual that seemed to disappear. And the status of the Squadron Supreme of America, it remains unknown. The government currently having Stanley Stewart, aka Blur, locked up because they have no idea who he is. No fingerprints, no ID, no recollection of him ever actually existing. And he tries to tell them who he is, but they have no idea. Now, Blade believes that these guys were just pawns in Mephisto's overall plan. And by all accounts, it doesn't seem like they wanted to go along with everything he was doing. They were just more puppets to the grand scheme. But Blade he plans on telling the Avengers everything that happened, or at least as much information as they may actually believe. You know, this is a lot to drop on them, but he knows one thing for certain, that this was an attack. This was an attack from Mephisto. The issue is, how do you go bigger than this? How do you one-up something this grand of a scale? And Blade worries that he's going to regret asking that question. And that's when we're taken to Mephisto. Now for him, this isn't necessarily a failure, because this wasn't the grand scheme. This wasn't the big plan. Mephisto's overall plan was to bring everybody together, to show what the power of one Mephisto could do. And by doing this, by showing the council all of this, he proposes that with one individual being able to have this power, what could 615 more do? What they could truly do with the Council of Red. And that will be the end of this issue. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I absolutely loved this story arc. It has been absolutely tons of fun, and I loved watching Squadron Supreme get their butts kicked by the Avengers. But this is definitely setting up a much bigger event to come. This is setting up the Council of Red. We are going to see a battle of epic proportions in the future. And this book, it leaves us on a cliffhanger of so many different questions, but I for one am 100% here for it. I love the artwork, I love the storyline, I love Squadron Supreme as a whole. This being, the 25th anniversary, they had to celebrate it. And I think this pays so much tribute to the Squadron Supreme. But yeah, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you have not yet, do me a favor, hit that sub button, hit that notification bell, make sure you don't miss any of the awesome content we have coming out, and until the next breakdown.